Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Horace F. Whitaker Jr., and welcome to our channel, Thoughts for Living. We at Thoughts for Living are committed to publishing and creating useful and engaging content. We would hope this content helps us all better understand how our environment impacts our consciousness, and then how our consciousness influences our worldview, and together, how that might help us build a more sustainable world. Thank you for helping us in that job. We would hope if you have further questions, you'd reach out to us at thoughtsforliving.com. Thank you for your support. So many people might not be aware of why the United States seems to just automatically support Israel, or the state of Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, without question. And as we were saying, Israel, the Zionist state, was formed on land that was already occupied by other people. And of course, we know in U.S. history, the people who came here did the same. In the research, they call it white settler colonies. And basically, that describes Europeans, whites, getting on boats and sailing to other continents, other lands, and arriving there, and they find indigenous people. But instead of making friends with the indigenous people, they come in and they claim the land in the name of the king or in the name of God, and then they kill and murder the indigenous people who were already living there. In past history, before World War II, we didn't have a word for the actions. We had words for what took place. They would call it colonization. But they didn't have a term for what colonization actually meant, which was exterminating the native people. That's the outcome of any people who get on boats, go to another land and find people there. What they ultimately want to do is remove the people so that they won't have anybody trying to stop them from taking the natural resources on the land. And so you can't really separate exterminating the native people from white settler colonies. And the word that, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a Jewish brother, I can't call his name right now, but he came up with the term genocide. And that's what white settler colonies do. That's what took place here. When Europeans came here, there were native nations all over this continent. And the Europeans came here and committed genocide against the native people, killing them, raping them, and taking their land and resources. And so this is what the United States and Israel and most European countries, for that matter. That's why most of the European countries support Israel, because this is what they have done. A matter of fact, this is how you showed how great you were as a nation, by going to other lands and dominating other people, taking their lands, taking their resources, and exterminating the people. This was done by Germany to a group of people who lived on the continent of Africa. They pretty much starved those people to death, and they no longer exist. It's only because native people, and I dare say it's only because Asian people who were here in the United States and our African ancestors who were enslaved and brought here, it's only by their strength as a people and Almighty God that the attempt by white settlers here in North America who came to Turtle Island, that they didn't kill just every single being. Thank God we are still here. And this is part of the reason, too, brothers and sisters, we see this pushback in the United States about really teaching our history. Because if you teach the history, then you have to talk about the fact that the United States was founded on genocide. The United States was founded as a white settler colony, or what became the United States. And initially, they were just colonies, but what becomes the United States comes about because Europeans came here and attempted to exterminate the native indigenous peoples. So that is the relationship that the United States and many of the European nations have in supporting Israel. It would be like if you was running with some of your friends, right? And if your friend jumped up and climbed the tree, then if you jumped up and climbed the tree, your friend couldn't tell you, you need to get down. You'd be like, well, you jumped up here. And so that's basically what we have going. These other countries who have been white settler colonies, like Great Britain, have gone all over the world and set up colonies where they attempted to exterminate the native people, where they took the resources and killed the people. They don't talk against other countries who do the same thing, you see. And so Great Britain certainly has been a colonizer all over the earth, as the United States has been a colonizer. Again, the Belgians, France, have all been all through, Germany, all over the continent of Africa, killing, enslaving our brothers and sisters. And so South Africa was right to charge Israel with genocide. Israel, you may not know, the Zionist state of Israel, supported the apartheid government that segregated, abused, tortured, and murdered our brothers and sisters in South Africa, which led to their rebellion, which was led by the ANC, great brothers and sisters who sacrificed their lives and their careers for freedom, justice, and equity. And so it was right for the South African government to charge Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, with genocide, as they helped South Africa in their apartheid state against blacks in South Africa. Another thing that you can see in common when we say the word apartheid, that just simply means segregation, which we had legally in the United States throughout the 1950s, up and really through about 1965, I think, in terms of actually being made illegal. But you still had practices that went into the 70s. And even today, if we'll tell the truth, we live in an apartheid society. Most people who are black live in black communities and go to black schools, majority black schools. Most people who are white live in white communities and go to predominantly white schools. The United States is a segregated society. Not only is it a segregated society, it's a white racist society. And this is why you see support from many in the United States for the Zionist state of Israel. Now, you can't have genocide without being inhumane. And as the U.S. was toward the native people here, and as the U.S. was toward African Americans who were kidnapped and brought here to this country, we can see that same kind of mindset and justification with what's going on right now in the United States. We understand clearly, without question, that the MAGA movement led by Trump, he's the white supremacist candidate. And he has said how he wants to kill and imprison people that he doesn't like. He said it out of his mouth. And one article says it this way: Trump no longer bothers to conceal his desire to rule as a dictator of a virtual police state and to claim the right and power to imprison, torture, and execute any and all who oppose him. This comes from the NYU historian Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and she's a leading expert on fascism. She went on to say that Trump is telling Americans very clearly that he will be jailing and killing Americans. Anyone who votes for him is complicit with these future crimes, she says, because of this transparency and these threats. Americans cannot say they did not know ahead of time, unquote. This is the same behavior that we're seeing out of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Zionist state of Israel. They're basically killing and torturing people that they don't like. And if you remember right before the October 7th, millions of Israelis, courageous Jewish sisters and brothers were protesting the move by Netanyahu to change how the Supreme Court operated. Because, like Trump, Netanyahu has been alleged to have committed crimes, all kinds of crimes, like Trump. And Netanyahu is not going to try to have a ceasefire because he knows that the minute the war stops, then he may go to jail. And so he's trying to stay out of jail just like Trump is trying to stay out of jail. But we see the same behavior. We see the threats. We see the name calling. To call other human beings vermin. To call other human, treat other human beings and to call them out of their names, to refer them as animals. People do that so that they can justify killing other human beings. And that's not good. So we see this with this MAGA movement. White supremacists. You know, one thing I think we're going to learn to regret is a lot of us don't want to use the term. Matter of fact, one or two probably shaking in your seat right now when I say white supremacy. But if you look at the news today, they're calling what some of these people are doing conservatism. But it's not conservatism. When these governors and legislators in these states, when they put bills together and talk about continuing to segregate black people and white people, providing vouchers so that whites will have the ability to use public school dollars to pay for private education. When George Wallace said some of these things in the 60s, and he was called a white supremacist. He was called a staunch segregationist. And today we have so-called Republicans acting and talking no different than George Wallace was talking in the 60s. And he was called, everybody knew he was a white supremacist. This is not conservatism that we're seeing with Donald Trump. This is not conservatism that we're seeing with DeSantis. These are actions taken by white supremacists. This is what white supremacists do. When down in Florida, he just stopped all public universities from teaching sociology. And they're going to replace the sociology with the American history class. Of course, that doesn't say anything about Europeans getting on boats, coming to the United States and kidnapping, or coming to the United States and killing the indigenous people and kidnapping us. But you know what they tried to say? They tried to say in their reading of history that slavery had benefits because supposedly black folks learned job skills. Now that's white supremacist talk. To say slavery was beneficial to black people? Now, you know, no one in their right mind would say that the Holocaust was beneficial to our Jewish brothers and sisters. The person would be immediately called anti-Semitic, and rightly so. But now we have these supremacists running around here, talking white supremacist talk, acting like white supremacists, arming themselves. And in some cases, they're continuing to commit mass murder against us, black and brown people. But nobody wants to call them white supremacists. We talking about the alt-right. Folks trying to get us to believe that these people are just conservatives or right wing. This is not right wing. This is not conservatism. This is not the alt-right. This is good old-fashioned American white supremacy. And brothers and sisters, we need to call it what it is. You see, they don't have any problem wrongly attacking critical race theory. Now they're wrongly attacking diversity, equity, inclusion. They attack everything that has to do with making America better, making America open, making America more free, more just, and more equitable. No, they're fighting against all of that. Well, this is what they were doing, their ancestors did in the 50s and the 60s. They fought against black and white people going to school together. They fought against black people voting. And what do you see right now? Most of these so-called red states, all they're doing is voting in voter suppression laws. They're gerrymandering the state so that black people and brown people and Asian people, Arab and Muslim people can't have a majority in representation. Why? So that whites can stay in control. Well, what does that mean? That's white supremacy. And it seems a lot of us are too scared. It's a shame. Or too scared to at least just call it what it is. Nope, you don't have to go out and do any protesting. But my goodness, we ought, for what our ancestors did for us, we wouldn't be here today. King called it what it was. Malcolm called it what it was. We're dealing with white supremacists. We're dealing with a country that wants to maintain white control of the political, social, and economic apparatus of the country. And that's wrong. That's just as wrong as what the Zionist state is doing to Palestinians. That's to maintain control over people. And you know, everybody around the Palestinians are getting paid. Now, I must speak to this too. Now, you have some Arabs who are warmongers as well. Qatar gave Palestine $2 billion. And I'm not hearing from a whole lot of Palestinians about how that money made its way to regular Palestinians. They dug tunnels. Because all around this issue, my friends, people are getting paid. Racism, white supremacy makes money. They sell guns, they sell bullets, they sell tanks, they sell bombs, they sell airplanes. Folks make money off of oppression, off of killing other people, off of exterminating and trying to destroy people. Warmongers making money. But now the idea that money is a side issue. The main issue is power, to have control over other people, to have control over their resources. And on this, European nations, the United States and Israel have that in common. They are all have established white settler colonies all over the earth. All over the earth. More so than any other people. I think that's part of the problem why they're always upset with China. But China didn't get on boats and go nowhere and colonize people. They don't have no long history of doing that, or neither do Russians. They don't have no long history of getting on boats, going to where black and brown people live and claiming it for themselves. Europeans do. Got a long history. Belgians, French, Germans, Italians, the British, and these Americans. That's his story. And they don't want that story taught in schools. And so they come up with legislation that says what? You can't teach a subject or subject matter that makes little white children feel bad. Now, that already tells you what the deal is. Anybody knows that if somebody told you that your grandmother or great-grandmother and great-grandfather and great-grandfather went to other people's land and took the land from them and stole it and killed the people, and then tried to write a story to say how great they were, children would look at it and say, well, I don't think that's right. And see, what some of these white people don't recognize is that their children already know who they are. And that's why today we're looking at 80 and almost 80-year-old people running the country because they know their children want a different world. They are afraid that their children are not going to continue the legacy of exploiting other people, of taking resources from other people. They are afraid that if their children are in control, their children might try to create a world that's more free, more democratic, more just, and equitable. And they don't want that. So here we are in 2024, looking at one candidate that's already 80 and another candidate that's hitting right at it. And we have all of these young people, talented, intelligent, critical thinkers who are ready to lead. But these old white supremacists are basically saying, take it out of our dead hands, rather than pass the baton. You know, that used to be the narrative that they told us when we were children, you know. white folks look out for each other and, that black people didn't. Oh, that you can see that's not true. They're not passing the baton to the young people. No. They want to make sure that it falls in the hands of somebody who's going to continue to continue the legacy of exploitation, continue the legacy of white settler colonies, continue the legacy of committing genocide against black and brown people all over the world. Now, we can see that happening globally in Gaza as the Zionist state commits genocide against the Palestinians. We see it in our nation where Trump is leading white supremacists to try to take over the United States and establish an authoritarian dictatorship under white supremacy, where he can then kill everybody who doesn't bow down to him and kiss his orange behind. And we see the same thing in our state here in Alabama. It's a shame they just executed a man who was on death row for committing murder. It's no question that the man did it. But the state of Alabama used a technique that has never been used in the world. They murdered this man, killed him, using nitrogen gas. And I'd like to share with you some of the comments about it. I want to read from this brother, Brian Stevenson, a great American who's responsible for the museum and the memorial built in Montgomery, Alabama, which, if you haven't come, you've got to come and see it. It's one of the greatest sites in the United States. But Brian Stevenson, a well-known lawyer who has fought against the death penalty and founded the nonprofit Equal Justice Initiative, also condemned Smith's execution. Quote, "The threshold question of the death penalty isn't whether someone deserves to die for the crime they've committed. The threshold question is, do we deserve to kill?" Unquote. He said in an interview on CNN, quote, "In our society, we don't rape people who rape. We don't torture people who torture. That's because we believe that the integrity of the law means we have to do better than the worst offenders in our society." Unquote. Jeff Hood, who was Smith's spiritual advisor, was in the death chamber with Smith when he was killed. In a tearful television interview with CNN, he said Smith popped up on the gurney over and over and over again. He shook the whole gurney. You know, the gurney is the thing they lay you on when they're going to take your life. Smith went on to say, quote, "I have never, ever seen anything like that," he said. "That was torture," unquote. So the state killed a man using gas. Now you would think after the United States fought Hitler in World War II and the Nazis used gas chambers to kill and murder our brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and others, blacks and LGBTQ folk as well, were killed during that time. You would think this country, the last thing this country would do would be to use gas. But when the country is founded on killing and murder, I guess it really just doesn't make a difference. Whether it's a gun, whether it's a tank. The United States is the only country dropped a nuclear weapon on a people. They dropped a nuclear weapon on the Japanese at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Only country ever dropped a nuclear bomb on human beings. So, it really doesn't matter. As this brother said, Brother Raoul Peck, in his great film, Exterminate All the Brutes, the U.S. are masters at killing from a distance. And to think that we as human beings, as flawed as we all are, have the right to kill other human beings. And we call it justice. But there's no justice in killing human beings. As Mr. Stevenson so eloquently stated, okay, when a person goes to jail for rape, we don't rape him. If a person gets put in jail for torturing, we don't torture the person. I had never thought about that. But now when people kill other people, we kill them. Now, I don't think that shows that we're better than the other people. That's why King and the Civil Rights Movement really was phenomenal. Because what they knew fundamentally was this. If we act like the white supremacists who hate us, if we do to them what they are doing to us, we're no better than them. We see this in Palestine as well. What you had was, you had children or young men with slingshots, right? They're throwing rocks. But you got soldiers shooting them with rifles. Now, when I was growing up as a kid, we wouldn't call that a fair fight. You got guns and bullets, I got rocks, and you get to shoot me. And then you call that war. That's not a war. So not only are we showing our humanity in genocide, we show our inhumanity when we kill people. And the man in the chamber with Mr. Smith said it was torture. Now, that's one type of torture. The other one I'm concerned about too is you got this Mississippi governor, and I just say it this way, these white supremacists are willing to starve white children if it means keeping tax dollars from helping black poor children. The governor of Mississippi is refusing to accept federal money to provide children food in the summertime. Quote, the cruelty of being the poorest state in America and choosing to turn down federal aid for poor children to eat, remarked Nicole Hannah-Jones. Mississippi gave millions of dollars of welfare funds to former NFL quarterback Brett Favre, and they've tried to keep that on the low, to build a volleyball facility at his daughter's school, but they won't take federal funds to feed hungry children. Because helping poor kids in the kind of welfare that Republicans hate Republicans hate welfare for poor people, but they don't mind welfare for rich corporations. So there we have it. It's inhumane to commit genocide. And brothers and sisters, it's inhumane to kill people. And if it's inhumane to kill people, it's certainly inhumane when you have the opportunity to feed people, to not feed them. Now, this is not the behavior of conservatives. This is the behavior of white supremacists, people who simply want to stay in control. Now, this lets us know the importance of what we have to do in terms of organizing for this upcoming election. And I'll say this before we close. It's important, brothers and sisters, to make sure we have our voting cards, to make sure that we are already registered and on the rolls. Also, we need to double check and make sure of our polling place. Also, we need to help other people get registered in those states where we can. And if we can, avail ourselves to helping our seniors get to the polls. But it's vitally important, brothers and sisters, that we vote like we've never voted before. Now, there's some people out there talking about, well, since Biden is supporting Israel, or we're not going to vote. No. It's wrong for the United States to support Israel. But let me tell you what would be worse, is to allow white supremacists to set up a dictatorship in this country. It can get worse. If you think it's bad, you let somebody like Trump, anybody on that so-called Republican side, these are white supremacists, and they're willing to do anything to stay in control. Now, we got white supremacists on the Democratic side as well. But I don't hear anybody over there talking about killing folks they don't like. So we have to be ready to turn out to vote. We thank you so much for taking out your time. Hopefully, you can see we've kind of changed the format a little bit, and I'm trying to get more comfortable with being in a more relaxed state. But also, we're looking forward to turning our program into a live call-in. And so those of you who are friends on Thoughts for Living, our Facebook page, you should be receiving a notice or a mailing that will invite you to join us so that on our live call-in broadcast. And that way we can have a little bit more give and take, where we could take your questions and we can engage in a dialogue and hopefully broaden what we're already trying to do here in sharing useful content. For more, please go to thoughtsforliving.com.
Wow.
As you can see, we see the world a little bit differently. We think that's important because if we see the world differently, it might help us in making different decisions. And those different decisions might lead us to a different kind of world, a more loving, kind, and sustainable world. Thank you for helping us in that endeavor. Please feel free to reach out to us at thoughtsforliving.com. Have a great rest of your week.